Steelers Nation, let me tell you something. There are days in football that hit different. And what we watched recently from Darnell Washington was one of those moments that spreads way beyond the black and gold crowd. You probably saw that monster run everyone keeps replaying, the one that lit up every corner of social media, because it was more than just a nice game. It looked like one of those plays you show friends who do not even watch football, just so they understand how wild this sport can get. From the first shove to the last poor defender bouncing off him like a traffic cone, the whole thing felt unreal. And then he stands there afterward, not taunting, not flexing, just letting the stadium understand that a man that size doing things that athletic is something you do not overlook. That is exactly the point now. The tape is out there. The signs are obvious. So the real question is whether the people who run this team are ready to treat that play not like a fun highlight, but like a clue to something bigger. Because what we are watching is not random. It is not a lucky afternoon. It is a player who has hit a new tier, and the only thing left is for the coaching staff to lean into it instead of pretending this is just some temporary spark. The craziest part is that none of this should be surprising. You see Darnell off the field, and it almost does not compute. There are tall players, there are heavy players, and then there is this combination of power and size strapped to a frame that looks like it was designed in a lab. People always quote his official weight like it still means anything, but anyone around the team knows he has not been that number for a long time. His teammates even joke about it, because the man looks like he was born to bend offensive lines by himself. He talked about it once and laughed, almost like he knows everyone is trying to solve the math behind what he really weighs, and none of it matters. He is simply built differently. But the true magic shows up when the ball actually goes his way. The hands have become clean, confident, strong. The footwork after the catch, which was once a weak point, now looks like a piece of his game he has polished to perfection. That first move he makes once he secures the pass, that little jolt forward, that sudden shift for his size, that has become the biggest improvement since he arrived in the league. And it did not just appear. It was something he and the staff worked at relentlessly. And now you can see the payoff every time the ball touches his hands. What makes him such an absolute mismatch is that the moment he starts running, he leaves the tight end category behind. He stops being compared to guys his size and instead becomes this unstoppable force chasing down smaller humans who genuinely look unsure about how to tackle him. Watching these defenders fly off him like he is made of a different material almost feels comical. It reminds me of those old superhero fights where the villain towers over everyone else, brushing off hits without even noticing. That is what his run looked like. A giant moving through people who are doing everything they can just to slow him down. And when you have someone with that type of impact, using him sparingly makes no sense. The numbers back it up too. Every time he is on the field for a significant stretch, the offense changes. The run game breathes. The balance returns. The whole unit looks more stable because his presence alone forces the defense to respect formations they normally would not. The success when he is out, there's not some strange coincidence. It is not magic. It is simply what happens when you put a physical nightmare on the field for half the snaps instead of a quarter of them. The team has played 10 games so far, and he has been targeted only 18 times. 18. That is a tiny number for someone capable of turning a simple catch into a moment that gets played on every highlight reel in the country. He has racked up a little over 200 receiving yards and a single touchdown, and anyone watching can tell you that those stats have nothing to do with his ceiling. They only reflect how little he has been featured. Imagine doubling his opportunities, or even just committing to him as a secondary focal point. You would not just get bigger numbers. You would change how defenses prepare for this offense entirely. Even more impressive is how often the Steelers win when he is heavily involved in the snap count. Every time he crosses that 40-snap mark, the team's run production spikes, the scoreboard swings in Pittsburgh's favor, and the whole offense starts to look like something with real identity again. Sure, some of that is game script, some is momentum, but ignoring the consistency of it would mean ignoring reality. When he plays more, the team performs better. Sometimes football is not complicated, and that is why days like the one he had against Cincinnati matter. Not because of the opponent's ranking or the final score, but because it is one more piece of evidence piled on top of everything we have seen since he arrived. It is one more reason to treat him not like a supporting piece, but as someone evolving into a weapon. A real weapon. The kind you circle on a scouting report and pray does not line up across from your defense all afternoon. You give a player like this room to grow, and he can change the entire dynamic of a season. You hold him back out of habit, and you end up leaving yards, points, and wins sitting on the table for no reason other than fear shaking up the system. And nothing about this player says you should be cautious. Everything about him says you push the throttle harder. And while everyone is buzzing about what Darnell just did, there's another storyline swirling through Pittsburgh that refuses to quiet down, and that is the conversation around Mason Rudolph. Every time he steps onto the field, he becomes one of the most polarizing figures this franchise has seen in years, not because of controversy, but because he represents a question the Steelers have never fully answered. What exactly is keeping him from being viewed as a legitimate long-term option? The funny thing is, the moment he gets a real chance, he always flashes something that makes people stop and think. That game against Cincinnati was another reminder of the version of him we saw in 2023. The calm feet in the pocket, the timing throws, the rhythm passing that makes the offense look smoother and less frantic. It was the same quarterback who showed patience, kept his eyes forward, and delivered with accuracy when the team needed it. Nobody is pretending the Bengals' defense is elite, but that does not erase the fact that his traits translated the way they always do when he gets a real shot. And that consistency has always been the most interesting part of his story. He prepares like a starter. He stays locked in even when weeks go by without taking meaningful snaps. His coaches have never questioned his professionalism. His teammates have never questioned his mentality, and his arm talent has never been the issue. The problem, if you even want to call it that, is the way the league works. Football is the one major sport without a real place for quarterbacks to develop once the season starts. There is no minor league to stash them in. There is no secondary league where they can sharpen timing and rhythm. You sit, you watch, you practice, and you hope that eventually someone gives you a window to show what you can do. And for quarterbacks like Rudolph, that window is either incredibly small or arrives at the worst possible time, usually in the middle of chaos when the team is trying to salvage a season. So much of what happened in 2019, the concussion, the fallout, the noise around the team, all of that created a shadow over his early years in a way that never fully matched his actual performance. Add in long stretches of inactivity, and the narrative simply froze. People stopped evaluating him based on what he could be and instead judge him on a very limited sample. But when you step back and look at what he has actually shown on the field, especially in his later opportunities, you see a quarterback with tangible improvement. His timing is sharper. His touch on short throws has gotten significantly better. His deep ball is cleaner and more consistent. The pocket presence, something he was criticized for early in his career, has matured into a strength. He stands tall, delivers on time, and plays within the structure of the offense in a way that helps the line look more stable and helps the receivers stay in rhythm. The biggest obstacle for players like him is not ability. It is the system itself. Without a developmental league, your reps come at the mercy of injury or disaster, and neither is a healthy blueprint for building a career. Younger quarterbacks come in, soak up the headlines, and suddenly the veteran backup gets pushed further into the background, no matter how steady he is. And yet, across the league, there are countless examples of players who resurfaced after being written off, quarterbacks who took 3 or 4 years to figure things out, only to break out on new teams or under new systems. When they finally got an opportunity not tied to desperation, they proved they could win. And that brings us to the crossroads the Steelers find themselves approaching. Next season, the quarterback conversation is going to be unavoidable. The draft class might not be overflowing with star prospects, and the market for proven veterans is rarely stable. What they do have, though, are 2 quarterbacks within the building who know the system, know the environment, and know the expectations. Rudolph has experience and steadiness, while Howard has youth and upside. And both of them deserve evaluation without the cloud of assumptions hanging over them. There's always this tendency in the NFL to chase the new name, the shiny prospect, the mystery that might turn into something special. But sometimes the answer is not hiding behind the next draft class or waiting for a splash signing. Sometimes the answer is the player already in your locker room, the one who has spent years sharpening his craft while waiting for the league to slow down enough to give him a fair lane to run. Rudolph is 29 years old, right in the window where many quarterbacks take their biggest leap. He has lived through systems changing around him. He has weathered criticism that was louder than anything his performance ever warranted. He has shown leadership, poise, and growth even when the only real opportunities came in brief, pressure-filled stretches. And most importantly, every time he has been thrown into the fire, he has given the team a chance to function with structure and purpose. The organization might not know today what direction they will go months from now, but ignoring what he brings to the table would be just as short-sighted as ignoring what Darnell brings on the offensive side. This team has pieces, real pieces, and two of the most intriguing ones are a 6'7" tight end who moves like he was built for a different sport, and a quarterback who keeps reminding everyone that patience in this league is an underrated virtue. What becomes of them depends entirely on whether the people in charge are willing to look past assumptions and see what is right in front of them. The future does not always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up quietly, in the form of a stiff arm that goes viral or a quarterback who refuses to let his story be written for him. And when moments like that stack up, they become impossible to ignore. And that is the challenge for any coaching staff that prides itself on development. You cannot ask for players to grow and then look surprised when they actually do. You cannot preach next man up and then freeze when the next man proves he can deliver. Eventually, performance has to matter more than draft status, reputation, or whatever label someone earned years ago. When a tight end turns into a matchup nightmare and a quarterback proves he can stabilize an offense, those are not coincidences. Those are signs of players stepping into who they were supposed to be all along. The truth is, the Steelers have reached a point where decisions are going to define more than just a season. They will shape the identity of an offense that has spent years searching for balance. Leaning into strengths has to become the priority, not the exception. When you watch Darnell dragging defenders or Rudolph firing strikes from the pocket, you are seeing hints of what this group could become if the organization stops hesitating and starts trusting what the field is showing them. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. A ripple of disbelief is spreading across the NFL landscape, fueled by whispers that seem too explosive to ignore. Matthew Stafford, long considered the steady cornerstone of the Los Angeles Rams offense, is rumored to have severed ties with the franchise in a stunning and dramatic turn. The talk began as a faint murmur, an offhand comment here, a cryptic gesture there, but has now grown into a full-blown storm after reports surfaced linking Stafford to none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sources close to the situation hint at an abrupt shift behind closed doors, describing a fundamental fracture between Stafford and key decision-makers within the Rams organization. The exact trigger remains wrapped in speculation, but those in league circles suggest a clash over offensive philosophy and long-term direction. Stafford, known for his calm demeanor and calculated leadership, has reportedly become increasingly frustrated with inconsistencies around him, sparking conversations that may have escalated faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh has quietly become the epicenter of intrigue. Observers have spotted subtle signs, private conversations, unusual travel patterns, and a few unguarded comments from people who shouldn't know anything, all pointing toward an improbable union. The idea of Stafford donning black and gold feels surreal. Yet insiders insist that the Steelers have been quietly evaluating veteran options for months, searching for a steady arm to elevate a roster hungry for stability under center. Social media has erupted with theories. Some claim that the entire situation is nothing more than smoke stirred up by restless agents looking to leverage negotiations. Others argue that the sheer volume of chatter indicates there is real fire beneath it. Fans on both coasts are split between disbelief and cautious excitement. wondering whether the NFL is on the verge of witnessing one of the most unexpected quarterback shifts in recent memory. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.